Before we talk about the campaign, let's talk about the meth issue in South Dakota. This is something you ran on in the gubernatorial election. This was a big part of your platform, was tackling this problem. Why is this issue so important to you?
You know, I would say I first realized the extent of the problem we have in South Dakota several years ago. I had spent quite a bit of time with our law enforcement officers. I was with the Aberdeen folks down in Sioux Falls and several of our different smaller communities, and really watched what they deal with every day, dealing with families in crisis. And probably during that time is when I really recognized how it literally, the meth epidemic is destroying families. I watched some body camera footage of officers going into homes where mom's high on meth, beating her head against the wall, kids are crying. Everyday normal communities that are dealing with this type of situation, elevated crimes. And that's probably really what gave me the passion for this issue, recognizing that we're gonna have to approach this problem in different ways, and we're gonna have to have a lot more help.
Last week you mentioned children, and I talked to your Secretary of Tribal Relations. He was talking about on Rosebud that kids are being used to traffic the drugs, that he heard that. And I mean, how do you feel? I mean, you're a parent. I can't even imagine what that feels like.
No, and I've heard so many stories of that as well. And I think when you're on the ground, you realize what's really going on right in our backyards, and in our smaller communities, in our most rural areas, but also in our biggest cities. I remember being with the Sioux Falls folks at the law enforcement, when they were doing some SWAT team exercises, but also encountering pregnant moms high on meth that were incarcerated and going through tough situations. You know, of all of the drug charges that go through our court system, over 80% of them have to do with meth. And we have twice the national average of 12 to 17-year-olds that have tried meth. So in South Dakota, we have a unique challenge in the fact that there's higher usage, it's more prevalent, it's obviously very cheap, and we have some challenging times ahead if we don't really address the problem today.
Yeah, because the state saw, in the statistics the state put out, that they saw a 200% increase in the people seeking treatment for addiction in meth. And then, the first half of this year alone, there were 2,200 meth-related arrests. So the people are seeking treatment, but the problem still seems to be a problem.
You know, people are seeking treatment, but I think that a lot of times there hasn't been enough treatment available, which is why you saw me last year in my budget address request over $1 million to put into treatment, which we are enacting and putting in place. We also recognize that sometimes with meth, you need to have different types of treatment than with other drug addictions, and that we have to have a different approach, more support, more mentoring, more family support. It's a long-term addiction treatment process. And so those are the things that we're really focusing on, is making sure that we're addressing it correctly so we can start to see progress in healing people.
The campaign came out just a little more than a week ago. When you were first going through the proposals that came in, what were you looking for?
Well, the one thing I'd always talked about when I was running for governor, and what I told the people of South Dakota, is that we would be wise with our money, we would have an open bid process, and that we would be as impactful as possible for their future and for the next generation. And so all of those qualifiers were things that we looked at when we looked at proposals. The company that brought us this campaign brought a campaign that brought communities together, which is what we really need to do, and all the research shows is that you need to have whole communities helping people heal. It also was provocative. It would grab people's attention. And then it actually, the next phases of the campaign give us a plan of action. And it was a very comprehensive plan that this company put together that was different than anything that had happened in the past. And the state had done things in the past, but meth has only gotten worse. So we were looking for something that research showed would work, that was different, that would grab people's attention, and then give us a plan of action we could put in place.
Yeah, and you mentioned provocative. Did you hesitate at all when you saw that? So you picked it. Did you hesitate at all, thinking, I wonder how this is going to play out after it gets released?
You know, we definitely, when I saw the tagline, it grabbed my attention too. And people ask me all the time, you know, did it work how you thought? You know, I don't know. You know, I was surprised by people making it a joke, because addiction's not a joke. And I feel like people that did that don't have someone in their family that struggles with addiction, or haven't been through the trauma of that. I also feel like what it did by grabbing people's attention will be judged in the long run. We've had so much more traffic to our On Meth website than any other website we've had that's dealing with addiction before. We've had just all kinds of attention drawn to this. I think everybody in the state and beyond would say they've talked about meth more than they have in the last 5 years combined. And we've also had 55 people that have requested treatment, and 9 that have already been referred to that. So for those 9 people, for their families, if this campaign got them to take action, then I'd say it was life-changing. For me, I'm not the people in the ads. They're probably the ones that my heart goes to the most. They were brave, they were leaders, they stepped up and recognized that this would help South Dakota. But for me, for those 9 people, for those 55 that are currently in line to get into treatment, I think it can be extremely life-changing for them, and it might be the start to a really big movement towards healing families.
Is that kind of your measure of success? Like if I come back to you a year from now, is it the people who are referred into treatment, is that kind of how you're going to gauge the success of the campaign?
I think we will, and I think also by the amount of people that look at it differently. I think a lot of times in South Dakota, we have such a wonderful life. We're blessed. We've got fairly low crime rates still. We've got strong families, and we forget that there's people hurting in the house next door to us. Or that if somebody, we see in a restaurant or in a gas station might look like they are in crisis, we don't know what to do. I've been in those situations. I've met people and talked to them that were high on meth, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have the answers. And that's what I want every South Dakotan to realize is that even if they're paying attention to this campaign, as the next stages roll out, that they're going to know what to do next time. They're going to have all the information they need on how to come alongside that person, how to give them a reference to a treatment facility, how to support their family, how they can protect their children so they don't have to live in a situation that's dangerous for them. I want every person in South Dakota to know exactly what to do if they encounter someone who's tied up in addiction.
Are you worried at all about the state's reputation with the jokes, as we kind of talked about in social media, but then you also see like Saturday Night Live did something on it. Some of the late shows did.
See if you can tell why. Again, it's an anti-meth campaign, okay? This is their slogan and this is real.
Are you worried about the state's reputation?
I'm going to do everything I can to promote everything that's wonderful about this state. I love South Dakota from the bottom of my heart, so I hope everybody recognizes that was never my intention to do that. I think that a lot of the conversations that I've had, people are recognizing, after the first few days of people making jokes of it, they've dug into it, and even on the national level, they're covering meth now. And that is something that I think as time goes on, they'll recognize that we're honest, that we don't overlook challenges, that we're doing something different in South Dakota that's really helping people, and that the results will really show that in South Dakota, we don't ignore problems.
When you mentioned the statistics about people getting referred to treatment, I looked up some other things, and just like you said, it's a national thing. When I looked at the Google search data, the term meth was almost 3 times as popular across the country last week than in the past 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So, what are your thoughts on that, of the broad reach, not just in South Dakota, of this campaign?
Well, I think a lot of people, right away that weren't exposed to meth wanted to find out exactly what meth was and why it was such a problem in South Dakota and why we were talking about it.
Because some of us don't deal with it on a day-to-day basis, right? Yeah.
Right. And that is really what I think a lot of people across the country wanted to learn exactly what was going on. And maybe right away it was out of curiosity. But I'm hoping that something grabbed their attention so that they have more information the next time that they encounter someone with addiction, that they have a different perspective. This is one of the things I've realized in all my years of being in public service, is that every single perspective is important to come to the best solution. You have to look at things from other people's viewpoints and try to feel what they feel in order to come up with a solution that will work in the long term, that will be beneficial for the general community in the state. So hopefully through this campaign, if people looked at it and watched the commercials, a lot of the people that were making jokes, I would ask them, did you even watch the commercial? because the commercial is pretty powerful. And it obviously shows that these people aren't on meth, so it should have made you question, why are they saying this? That's, I said, if you watch the commercial, hopefully by the end of it, you'll want to learn more and you'll end up with a different perspective that may call you to action.
You mentioned your public service. I was reading your biography on the state website. The first line says, Kristi Noem is a leader consistently challenging the status quo. And I think this campaign has showed that, some of the things that you've done in your first year in office. So I want to know more about your leadership philosophy.
Well, I would say my leadership philosophy is taking on challenges and coming to consensus. I don't want to do things just to make a splash. I really want to tackle things that I think we can really do in South Dakota to help people be more successful. If I can facilitate that, I will. If I see problems, I don't like to look the other direction. But I really want to spend a lot of time explaining to people why we're tackling these as well. And that's what I need to dedicate more time to, is spending time talking to folks and explaining why we're making some of the changes that we're making, especially when it comes to fighting addiction. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars in South Dakota because of addiction. Because of the damage that it does to families, puts kids into foster care, in our court system, in our criminal justice system. 80 to 90% of the women that are in our women's prison are dealing with addiction. It is a challenge not just for those families and those individuals, it's a challenge for our state. And financially, it does cost us a lot of money. So for me, my heart is obviously with people who are struggling with addiction, but also from every other sense, and my responsibility as governor is that we address it because of all the challenges that it presents to us.
The $1.4 million is a significant amount of money. We are a traditionally conservative, fiscally conservative state. So why is that $1.4 million better spent on advertising than treatment or something like that?
Well, to get everybody to the table helping us solve the problem. Obviously, we've done awareness campaigns in the past. And this advertising campaign is only a part of what we're proposing as something that is really important to be doing. I also requested in my budget address last year more highway patrol officers focused on meth, DCI agents that would focus on catching those who traffic meth through our state. So we're doing more on the enforcement side as well. And then we also put forward, more money to put into treatment and partnering with nonprofits as well to make taxpayer dollars go farther, such as with Teen Challenge and some of those others that are working on addiction each and every day. So it's a comprehensive plan and approach, but I'm hoping that in the long run, not only are we helping families, but that we'll start to see the financial savings in our state budget too. As we address addiction and we don't just incarcerate people, the recidivism will go down and we'll also see a savings to the state. I would say that probably isn't my primary motivator, it's one of them. For me, it's about raising the next generation that could be the leaders of South Dakota into the future, and they can't do that if they're living in a home that's in crisis. And more we're seeing homes in crisis in South Dakota. So we need to go after that and give kids the support that they need to grow up and be successful, and then make sure we're addressing the biggest challenges that our state is facing.
I know you have limited time, so I just want to get through a few more things. You mentioned that you're disappointed in the jokes on social media. Yeah. Would you be worried, and I know you're saying this isn't your intention, but are you worried that the jokes are creating a challenging environment for someone who is in crisis at their house, who does have a substance use disorder, from getting the treatment they need? Are they worried at all with the jokes?
It could be, but also I've had several people tell me stories about how they were sitting around their kitchen table and talking about the campaign. It started out laughing about it, but it turned into a serious situation, and it turned into a discussion on, hey, I think I have a friend who might be doing meth, and it started a conversation on what they could do with that friend. I also think that obviously the campaign has given people the ability to say out loud that this is an issue, and a lot of addiction is shame. A lot of addiction, the reason that people don't go get help is because they're ashamed of it. So the more it's in everyday conversations, the more apt they might be able to say, hey, I have this problem, what do you think I can do about it? Because I really believe that all in all, when this campaign plays out, because it's not just a one-week campaign, it is a comprehensive plan to call people to action. It really will be something that I believe will break down the barriers of talking about it.
What as you said in your weekly column, that we all have a responsibility in this. What is my responsibility as a South Dakota citizen?
You?
Me? Well, or
Yeah.
everyone listening.
I think it's all of
watching.
our responsibility to start looking around us. You know, I told a story about a few weeks ago. I saw a young lady, a young mom walk into a restaurant with 2 little kiddos, and she obviously was high on meth, and we all didn't know what to do. You know, I was watching the restaurant's reaction to her, and everybody pretended they didn't see her. And
You included?
Well, I went over and looked and talked to her a little bit, but it was obviously she was agitated, and I recognized that I didn't have the tools with me to have this conversation. Talked to the people that at the restaurant to see if she came in a lot, but that's really, I think about her every day, and there's so many times that I've had these instances in my life where I wish I would have done more later, or I wish I would have been better prepared to see that situation. And that's really what I want to take away from everybody in South Dakota. I want you to feel equipped to, when you see somebody who's struggling, to know exactly what you can do to help them. Because every day now I think about that mom and those little kids, and the fact that she walked back out of that restaurant and we didn't really give her any answers or support to really get her life back on track.
Last question. The 2020 legislative session is 49 days away. So are there any proposals that we can be expecting about the meth crisis in South Dakota that your office is working on?
Well, I'm still hoping to continue to focus on it. I'm hoping the legislators will consider it a valuable conversation too. We need more treatment opportunities in South Dakota. I believe there's going to be more and more requests than we've ever seen in this state for people who want to be healed and want to be back a part of their lives and be successful. So I'm hoping the legislators will be willing to have a discussion on more treatment options. I'm going to be going through the next several days of analysis on final numbers for my budget, and we'll see where we sit on law enforcement requests and how we're doing with help focusing on getting those who traffic this drug through our state. And I think that the more we can continue to give people that call to action and that plan for what they can do in their communities, the better off that we'll be. So that'll be a good discussion for me to put in my budget, and then for the legislators hopefully to see what they can support.
Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so.